Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to the Land Marauder, our now resource harvester. So in today's episode, I'm actually going to be building something a little bit different, which you can probably tell by the title of the video, and that is currently being built in the background here. Now, this was built in the sandbox mode, because I haven't had any practice with lasers in a very long time, so please forgive me there. Either way, it's not particularly well made, so I will need to remake it later anyhow. But before we get into that, and before we get into what we'll be doing with the tank today, I would like to clear up a few things to do with the Land Marauder that apparently I left very vague in the previous episode, which seemed to confuse quite a few people. I do apologise for that. So with the Land Marauder, I can't repair it if it is above 2000 volume, even if the vehicle itself is naturally above that. I can't go above it. So right now, it's on volume 5964, I can't repair it past that, even though the vehicle itself could potentially go to 8,000 and something. Secondly, I could go ahead and replace every single damaged block in order to repair it, but that does not work properly when it comes to turrets if the turret segment itself is damaged, because I would have to replace the turret segment itself, which then would replace the entire turret from existence, and then I can't rebuild it. So that doesn't really work. You can sort of build the turret from the actual weapon itself and then place the turret down, but that doesn't always work and is incredibly buggy. It would also just take far too long, so that's not going to happen. So sadly, the Land Marauder will stay as it is. I would also like to thank everyone who was telling me ways of removing the volume limit. Several of them I was aware of, and several of them I certainly wasn't, but I won't be doing that because I feel it's just against the spirit of this game mode. So I will be keeping the volume. I won't be modding this campaign until we finish it, and then perhaps we'll do a modded campaign or something like that. I'm sorry for the really long intro, just I got so many comments, I thought it was worth just quickly going over before we get into the action, lasering things. The red lights look so ominous when it's dark. I've just noticed this. The vehicle is almost built now, but here in the corner we have this almost perfect square with some really weird sloping going on, and this is all the way here on the corner of the map. I don't think it serves any purpose. It's a little bit glitchy looking, but eventually I feel like I want to build something on here. And the vehicle is finished. So, currently, this is unnamed. It's a heavy tank. It's very heavy in armor, which is kind of a theme I'm going with at the moment. And it is my first laser tank. In fact, it's my first laser tank ever since, well, I haven't really built many tanks before this. The idea is, it's quite an expensive laser which shoots decently quickly over medium range. It's not overly accurate at very long ranges, but at medium range, it will tend to hit the target fairly well. The damage is fairly good, around about 3,000 per laser, split into two, so around about 1,500 each laser, with a decent armor penetration. The one problem it does have is it simply doesn't have enough engine power to actually continuously do that much damage. So after the first couple of lasers, it drops to around about 1,200. It also eats a lot of fuel. Like, a lot of fuel. I have no idea how the Lightning Hoods do it, but I'm assuming they use really inefficient engines, and they have a load of fuel storage, along with the fact that the enemy factions have essentially infinite resources when it comes to stuff like that. Either way, though, I'm fairly happy with it. I quite like how it looks on the front, taking a few cues from the rams from the enemy, and I will be naming it hopefully before the end of the video. So, this is what we're doing today. We're doing science. We're testing out a laser tank, which of course is this, and then later on I would like to try to build a light tank or just a fast responding vehicle. So two things should be tested today. Now hopefully, there's still a lot of enemies left in these neighbouring areas. Well, just over towards the east, we have found our first opponents, a Scrapworks and a single Sand Viper. Honestly, the Krull on its own should be victorious here, so bringing in the Krull and our new vehicle will be a nice, safe place to test just how well it does. To be perfectly honest, there is a real chance the laser weapon won't be as powerful as I hope it is, because I kept the testing to a minimum. Although it was built in the sandbox, I don't really know how well it's going to do. So, let's do some live testing. Begin the battle. Pause time for a second, okay, and the laser has already fired, and by the looks of things, I don't really know what it's done, considering a lot of the enemies have already destroyed themselves. Okay, it's going after the Sand Viper there. It's definitely caused it to flip out. It's now going after the Scrapworks, which I'm going to try and dodge on my Krull, which of course I am now currently controlling, otherwise I could just zoom into the laser weapon. Did I just bounce that cram cannon back to its original? That was really weird to see. Okay, I'm kind of trying to focus on the laser here. It's doing good enough damage at decent accuracy, although it did just hit myself there, but not quite as powerful as I would hope for the massive cost. Oh, AI dead! Stop, stop, stop. The laser actually managed to take out the AI. Can we grab the Scrapworks? Oh, why did you have to cram cannon it just as I captured it? Yes, we can. We have took the Scrapworks. Although it is now being destroyed, it does mean 100% of that resource was taken to us. So, a little bit difficult to see what was going on there. I do apologise for that, but I was trying to control the Krull whilst watching, and I don't know what to say, really. So, stop for a second, stay still. It seemed to do okay. It's now nighttime, so I can't see a sodding thing. It was accurate enough. That was definitely okay. So the detection system's working. The damage, on the other hand, wasn't quite enough. So either we need to have more engine power, we need to remove one of these barrels, or we need to slightly scale back the weapon so it's more efficient. That's what I think, anyway. Let's do another test. After being really underwhelmed by the laser in that previous clip, I've decided to make some drastic changes to the vehicle. It now has 10,000 engine power by sacrificing a lot of fuel efficiency. The weapon now has 3 barrels rather than 2, and it has a lot more draw from the engines. This way, we are going to use a lot of power, have 3 beams, and hopefully all of them will be able to keep up with the maximum damage, which is 8,000 per laser shot, which should be firing incredibly quickly with an armor penetration value of 32, which honestly was a mistake. I went a little bit overboard with that. Perhaps I'll change that later for some more brute damage, but for now, this is what we've got, so let's do some more testing. I think there should be an enemy next to us. The next battle has just started, and instantly the laser has fired, and by the looks of things, killed one of the smaller opponents. Let's carry on. First one down, so is a bike, and lots of bikes heading towards us. We've just taken out one of them, thankfully, and now we are going after the King Cobra. That's better. Okay, that was exactly what I wanted to see. Straight through its armor and straight to its core. We could possibly just have one barrel in the future and make sure it's perfect for that, just going for one specific point. I do feel sorry for the Krull. It's currently not being manned, which means it's essentially defenseless. Struggling a little bit there to hit that bike, but eventually taking it out, and we are being horribly, horribly rammed. We've also lost some of our flooring, which was kind of weird to see. Next target instantly being knocked out. Okay, this is exactly what I wanted to see. It's now worth the cost, because that was actually quite impressive. And the last of the major targets is being taken out, although it is also hitting the Krull. Change targets, please. Thank you. Anything else left? Well done. Okay, that was significantly better. We've seen that a single one of the vehicles is pretty good, so let's see how 2 of them do versus this next group. Once again, we'll just have the Krull as far back as possible as a distraction, a very heavily armoured distraction, and to continuously feed our new vehicles some fuel. I'm still not 100% happy with the accuracy, but when they do hit the target, they are definitely doing enough damage. I am really happy with that, at least. Although, we're still not testing out against full metal enemies, of course, until we get to a harder faction. They're not particularly good at attacking flyers. That is my fault. I only have them to be accurate at the moment. They don't particularly have a good arc of fire, and because of that, if the enemy is high up, they're not very accurate. That's weird. It's perfectly accurate, but it's targeting something which didn't exist anymore. It kept on hitting the exact same spot which didn't exist. Ooh, is that one of our laser tanks? Yes, it is. Oh dear. Well, we may have a single loss in this battle. It probably got bombed by the Shrike. And is that everything? Yep, AI dead, AI dead, well done. Oh, hello, one enemy left over there, apparently. I can never get that right. Every time I say there's no enemies left, something spawns in. Is that it? Just that. Okay, there we are. So, we took a fair bit of damage to this one over here, it seems. Not that much. Why did you stop firing, then, I wonder? Either way, we've got quite a bit of material just laying around, and we got some material from the fight. It was pretty much a neutral by the looks of things. If we go over here and get this, did we gain anything at all, or are we actually losing from that battle? Nope, we are back to where we was, and now I'm spending all of my resource to refuel. So, we won without actually losing anything, technically. I think for now, what we should spend a little bit of time doing is turning the Krull into a true AI-driven vehicle. At the moment, it does its job well, it has a refinery, it keeps everything going, and it's fairly well defended with a decent cram cannon, but without the AI movement, and without some proper long-range weaponry, I can't keep on using it, and I do adore the Krull, so I may make a second version using its hull, and then call it something completely different, because I believe the Krull may be a one-of-a-kind moment of insanity, and should always be that when I want to drive a vehicle myself. Well, that's just sad, but now the spin blocks have already been removed, so there we are. It definitely is an end of an era for the Krull, but like I say, I will be trying to keep the Krull as the Krull, and then we'll be making a new version of the Krull, which won't actually be the Krull, but will probably have some similar name to Krull. Or something. So for those wondering why sometimes I don't showcase half of the building I'm doing, it's because it looks something like this. Really, really cramped and almost impossible to see what I'm actually doing. It's very dark in here and very difficult to figure out what's going on. I could of course turn on this mode, but I actually find this remarkably disorientating. I can't tell at all what I'm doing when it's all miniaturized like that. So, this is the main compartment within the Krull. As you can see, it's actually rather spacious, and all of the armor around the sides are between 1 and 5 thick, depending on the section. And I've decided we're pretty much going to clear up this entire section, because I'm going to turn it into an RTG-powered vehicle. So rather than fuel, it's going to be powered off electricity. It's going to be nice and green. That way we don't have to worry about our carbon footprint and, of course, using up the fuel which I'm constantly making for the other vehicles, because this one just doesn't need it. It's not going to go very fast, which is really sad considering our version of the Krull, the version I will always be using, is actually remarkably quick, but the AI-driven version is going to be actually quite slow. So, we're going to turn it into an RTG-based one, like I've just said, and I think we'll probably have enough space to have a decent advanced cannon rather than the cram cannon. Although I could keep the cram cannon and then install a second weapon. I'm not sure, it depends how long range I want it. Anyway, just thought I'd tell you this is why I do skip a lot of building. Lovely and clean, nothing like a little bit of spring cleaning in the middle of winter in the middle of a giant deathly machine. And look, I've even added lights so I can see what I'm doing. So over here we have our refinery, which is soon to be extra armoured up from the sides. It's already heavily armoured on the top and on the outside, so nothing to worry about there. We have our local weapon controller section over here to make sure we can control our weapon nice and easily, and of course it's all nice and well defended. And then we have this huge open space here, which is going to house the new engine section, the ammunition section, and the material storage. It also needs a little bit of fuel storage just to make sure the refinery can actually put fuel into something. So let's get to work with that. Since some people were asking how do I build and have a look inside the vehicles, well, here it is. Here's the Krull, one of the largest of the vehicles. Now, how am I going to do this? So, I don't really want the RTGs near the outside because they are incredibly vulnerable and they are incredibly expensive. So I think what we'll do is use this natural little crevice over here to armour up there, and then here is where we'll put these. And I think 3 of them, honestly, will probably be enough. Like I was saying before, we don't want this to be too expensive and we don't really need that much power. So we'll keep that as it is, and we'll make it its own separate compartment with a little bit of space armouring. Like so. And then that can be a 2, and then carry on all the way up, and all the way around. And then in the future, because I was even boring myself, we have the ammunition and fuel all stored away in this lovely heavy armor block. We have the RTGs like we saw earlier, we have the batteries and electric engines, which of course are non-explosive, and they are close to the mainframe, and then we have our general purpose storage over here, because once again, it's not explosive, and it means I can make it next to the AI. Because the AI is in the middle, it means both sides worth of armor, defending all the different components, will also defend this section here. Those control blocks were originally because I was going to have this work on tank controls, even with the AI, but without a little bit of additional power, it didn't really work out too well. So instead we have steering wheels and we have some in the center as well, which I admit is kind of ugly as sin, purely because it does help the turning a lot and makes it a lot more agile. So there we are, the Krull is now completely AI based. All we need now is a new weapon, because I decided against the Cram Cannon. Some people are going to love me for this, and others are going to hate me. I am once again going with missiles, the most overused weapon in this game, because they are so much fun and so easy to set up. But to at least make it a little bit different, it is on a spin block, which is all nice and mounted here. It's got struts to make sure it looks like it's actually there, and I'm not quite done yet shaping the spin block itself, but I'm fairly happy with how it's turned out at this point. The reason why I've gone for this is because it was a very cheap option, it was very space efficient, and we don't really have the capability of having anything overly expensive for long range combat. And although the Cram Cannon was fantastic, it was so fun, at long ranges, because of the slow velocity of the shell, it just wasn't hitting targets. They would always change direction long before the shell would hit, and since I want this to stay as safe as possible in combat, this little missile silo will just act so much better. So I think, to end the episode, let's have one last test, find another enemy to test out the AI-driven Krull, and see how it does with 2 of the laser vehicles. This will be our last test of the day. I will be building the light tank in the next episode, because honestly I'm running out of time, and I'm feeling more and more sick as every minute goes by. So I've been trying to think of a name for our laser tanks, and the problem is, the laser tank itself doesn't really match the idea of Khorne. The idea of Khorne, the blood god, is it's all about destruction, blood, death, and as much gore as possible, and long-range, cowardly combat is normally frowned upon, so a very long-range precision weapon, which is all about killing the enemy with as minimum damage as possible, really doesn't seem to work. So none of the champions or the cults really work other than one, and the problem is, it's not a name I'm particularly fond of. The name itself is this. The Shriven. The Shriven are a cult of the Blood God, which were originally engineers who turned the entire engineering world against the non-chaos corrupted, and thus used poison gas and long-range weaponry, and essentially evil engineers with a lot of engineering stuff to kill the enemy, including laser guns. It just fits. So the Shriven is what I'm going to be calling it for now, and that's my reason and that's my logic, and I'm going into way too much detail about a name for a laser tank I'll probably upgrade and change later, but there we are because I'm paranoid about naming it something even weirder than usual. The Shriven. May end up changing that. May end up changing it. We have all but obliterated the Dustwind Gypsies. It turns out that after these two tiles, all of this is the Steel Empire. Over here is the White Flyers and other factions around here. I have pretty much dealt with all of them. I think there's only one tile left that's still Dustwind Gypsies. So in the next episode, I will have to declare war on a different faction because apparently I'm being very lucky and they're being incredibly lenient with my existence. They're just not attacking me. So with that, let's get into the final battle versus a Scrapworks, a King Cobra, and a Sand Viper. This may be the very last time we fight against them, although we do have all the blueprints over here, so we can at least create them in the future if we ever want some target practice, or to sacrifice them to the Blood God himself. Which is kind of counterproductive, since we'd have to pay a resource for it, but either way, killing is killing. The final battle against the Dustwind Gypsies begins, and the Krull seems to be working just fine. The missiles have been released, and now it is turning to run away. It doesn't want to be within 1,500 meters of any enemy. So, begin! AI dead straight away on one of them, and there goes one of the bikes, but will the King Cobra be able to do some damage? What on earth was you firing at then? Cram cannon just missing. And I believe that's the Scrapworks, that's their largest, and it's already 2 damaged. However, a lot of missiles heading towards it, and nope, the Scriven has survived. Yeah, I don't like that name. That name is definitely changing. It sounds too... I don't know what the word is, just off. It sounds a little bit off. And there's some more missiles from the Krull coming against the last enemy, and down it goes. I'm afraid flares don't work against these. AI dead. We could have captured it if we were closer, but the lasers did their job very well. Yeah, well done. The lasers just utterly devastated the enemies. The missiles are working as intended. And there's the Krull, nice and far away, broadsiding at that range. Everything worked as intended, and this is actually a nice little group. Although it doesn't have any rapid-fire weapons for very short range, it's going to be able to supply itself with fuel, and it has an extreme amount of long-range burst as soon as the battle starts, with both missiles and lasers. Don't hit each other. The Krull seems really small in comparison to these laser tanks, but they are incredibly short, so it's not quite as off as it looks. The Krull is essentially one giant volume worth of metal. And with that, I'm afraid I am all out of time for today's episode. If you have enjoyed, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. In the next episode, we will be building a light tank, and if by the time we have built it in the campaign no other faction has declared war on us, we will declare war on them. I'm not quite sure which faction I'll go for. Apparently the Steel Empire is one of the most difficult, so perhaps I'll go and be just a bit silly and go after the most difficult straight away, because we have a lot of resource currently doing nothing. We can easily replenish our numbers, and I kind of want to see some of our tanks explode in a bloody mess. So, thank you again for watching. I'm going to go and have some flu medicine and hopefully feel a bit better for next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.